Now, Nigeria's external reserves climbed to their strongest level in 6 years, crossing the $42 billion mark for the first time since September 2019. Latest data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows that reserves stood at $42.03 billion on September 19, 2025, presenting a significant rebound from earlier lows this year and providing renewed optimism for the nation's foreign exchange stability. The latest figure marks a new 72-month peak and underscores the steady improvement in Nigeria's reserve position since July, when the stock fell to its lowest point in 2025, compared with the $41.99 billion recorded a day earlier. The September 19th figure reflects an increase of $40 million. It also represents a substantial gain from the $41.42 billion level recorded at the beginning of September. The last time Nigeria's reserves were higher was on September 26, 2019, when they reached $42.05 billion. Since then, reserves have faced significant pressure from falling oil prices, capital flow reversal, rising import demand, and foreign exchange market interventions. And now, the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, and the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN, have opposed the federal government's plan to sell its stake in joint venture oil assets. The two oil unions also condemned in strong the proposed amendments to the Petroleum Industry Act. PENGASSAN President Festus Osifo, at a World Joint News Conference in Abuja, said both policies will destabilize the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited and put the economy at risk. According to Osifo, the planned sale of government stakes in JV asset will mortgage Nigeria's future and cripple its oil industry. On his path, the NUPENG President Williams Aboreha called on government to rethink its approach to economic reforms and stop considering asset sales.
Government is not trying to privatize, no. Government is trying to sell our future. That is what it is. It is not divestment. It is not divestment. Shell divested some of these assets. Shell divested some of these assets to Renaissance. That is divestment. ExxonMobil divested some of its assets to Seplat. That's divestment. Ditto NAOC, Nigeria Deep Oil Company, giving some of its assets to Owando. That is divestment. But in this case, because in those cases, who was the operator? The operator, as when ExxonMobil was selling off, was ExxonMobil, correct? The operator, as when Shell was selling off, was Shell. The operator, as when NAOC was selling off, was NAOC. So they were divesting, giving out their operatorship, giving out everything. But in this case, the operator of this asset is not federal government. The operator in this asset is not NNPC. So they are not divesting.
This is a clarion call for all Nigerians. We are protecting the entire Nigeria because these are Nigerian investments in these companies that are going to be sold. It's not just about NUPENG and PENGASSAN. We're talking about Nigeria here. It's just that the onus fall on us as those in the industry that we must also bring this before the attention of Nigerians.
Now, Nigeria's oil backbone runs on joint ventures between NNPCL and oil majors like Shell, Chevron, Total, and Eni. NNPCL usually holds about 55 to 60%, making the state the dominant partner. Now, government is considering selling part of that stake, cutting its shares to about 30 to 35% to raise cash and attract investment. Already the sector is shifting. Shell has sold its 30% in SPDC to a Nigerian consortium. ExxonMobil offloaded shallow waters assets to Seplat for $1.28 billion, while Chevron and NNPCL recently converted 5 JV assets under the Petroleum Industry Act. But the pushback is strong. Oil unions say privatization risks job losses and drains state revenue. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has warned that sales must be transparent and guided by national interest. Now joining us in the studio to discuss this is energy expert Olabode Sonwumi. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you and good evening. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much. I mean, you just heard what I just read out. Why are NUPENG and PENGASSAN strongly opposing the federal government's plan to sell oil and gas assets?
I think first of all, PENGASSAN and NUPENG should be recognized for who they are as stakeholders. However, stakeholders can be mistaken. Stakeholders can have errors of judgment. I'm not saying that is the case, but that is possible. What has happened now is that for whatever reason, whether it is right or wrong, they feel that their position is threatened by the efforts or the attempts by government to sell. And there may be reasons for that. Apart from the telecom sector where the privatization was very successful, most of the privatization in the country, I mean, particularly with the power sector, have not been as successful. So there may be the fear, there may be the concern that the oil sector, which is the mainstay of the Nigerian economy, may be going into private hands. And that is a concern. Whether it is true or not is a different thing entirely, but it is a concern. So it's like a case where a wife in the home has concerns from her husband. Whether those concerns are true or not, it is the responsibility of the husband to ensure that that particular wife is reassured. So in this case, there are concerns by people who are stakeholders in the economy. While we can go into the pros and cons of whether those concerns are legitimate or not, but what is important in going forward is that those concerns must be discussed and a mutual understanding need to be achieved. A mutual understanding may mean that both sides may compromise to achieve the goal in terms of what the government wants to achieve and what NUPENG is seeking to protect. But it is important that a discussion takes place.
All right, so but what are the possible economic and social implications of privatizing these assets?
So if we do privatize it, and we reduce our shares, it means that the income from oil is going to reduce. We will get a bulk sum from the sale, but for simple analogy, at the moment we have about 51, 55 in some cases in terms of percentage. What it means that if they pump 1.5 million barrels in a day, 55% of that cost goes into the federal account. Now, if those assets are sold and is reduced to 30%, what it means is that if we are pumping 1.5 million barrels per day, just 30% of that is going to go into the federation account. So that's the simple logic behind it.
All right, so how could the sales affect job security and workers' welfare in the oil and gas sector?
Well, it's simple. At the moment, the Nigerian government has the majority, which means that the majority of the workers in the sector are protected because the Nigerian government is the main stakeholder or is the management, so to speak. Now, if the Nigerian government loses the majority share, the management will cease to have majority influence of the Nigerian government, which means that the IOCs can decide to actually disband all of them. That is a possibility. But it's not likely, but it is something that a management can do. So it is from that aspect that there are concerns about the security of their job in a new environment where the Nigerian government does not have majority shares.
What impact might this move have on Nigeria's energy security and domestic supply?
Well, it will be too early to predict, but one of the things it does show is that Nigerians may be forced to think about source of economy outside of the oil and gas industry. In other words, we'll be forced to be creative in other ways, which was the things that happened before the advent of oil. That may take some time and it may not. But what it does mean is that there will be a time when there will be crisis and people will be forced to look at outside the oil industry. That's basically what that means.
All right, thank you so much, energy expert Olabode Sonwumi, for taking out your time to be with us in the studio.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.